So I was talking to one of my friends today, and they were just talking about how it just dawned on them that they had not contributed to their savings account this year, right? And we were just talking just about, hey, this was a goal of theirs. And, me, I'm just going to ask the questions like, why? What happened? What do you think it was? And it turns out she had started drifting financially and didn't even realize it, right? The reality is most women don't wake up one day and decide, you know what, today's the day. We're just going to abandon all the financial goals, right? When we drift off financially, it doesn't happen because of one bad decision. It doesn't happen because we stopped caring. These drifts, they happen quietly and it is subtle and it's slow. So slow you don't even notice while it is happening, right? You don't decide to lose the direction, but because you stop intentionally reinforcing it over time, the absence of the direction became the direction. Welcome back to another episode of the Breakthrough Bestie podcast. I am your host, Angela Brock, and we are continuing the series where we're talking about invisible leaks. So, listen, if you have not seen any of the previous videos, I encourage you to go back and take a look, right? Because tonight we're talking about the convenience tax and why busy women are paying it without even realizing it, right? I want you to think about drift and how it actually shows up, right? In your financial life, you don't suddenly abandon your goals. You just delay them, right? Think about my friend. She didn't suddenly decide, hey, I'm going to stop. She forgot to set up her auto drive for it to happen automatically. And because it wasn't in her face, her life got busy. Guess what happened? It became something that got delayed. She still wanted to do it, it's still part of her goals, but she just drifted off that path ever so slightly, right? She didn't all of a sudden say, "Hey, I no longer want to build well," right? No, she was handling what was urgent first, right? She wasn't being reckless. She wasn't being irresponsible. She got busy, right? And even in her busyness, she was still being responsible in those areas. This was just, what happened. 1 month went by, 2 months went by, we're moving into the third month, and it dawned on her, hey, I've drifted off the path, right? And even though she's moving in a direction financially based off of her financial goals, she wasn't moving forward in that direction, right? It's almost like walking on a treadmill. You're active, you're sweating, you are doing something, but you're not actually going nowhere, right? Drift feels productive because you're earning, you're spending responsibly, you're paying your bills on time, you're handling all the other responsibilities, and nothing looks chaotic, right? That's the danger. Drift doesn't look irresponsible, it looks normal. Right? Think about my friend. Her life was still moving forward and she was making some phenomenal strides, right? But when it came to savings and her savings goal, which was going to allow her to invest from the compounding interest and things of that nature, she wasn't really going anywhere. So now we have talked about your financial blueprint, right? So if you've been watching some of the previous videos, you know what I mean when I say financial blueprint. And this is the path that your money follows automatically, right? We've talked about balance and how your attention determines what gets supported. In previous videos, we have even talked about whether or not you are intentional and what drives where your money where your attention is, that's where your money follows, right? Drift is what happens when those patterns and that attention keeps reinforcing maintenance, but not the expansion. And maintenance is what keeps your life feeling stable, right? But without that intentional reinforcement, that expansion that you want, right? The growth, the fuller investment portfolio, the savings account, the retirement fund, those never actually get any traction, right? And it's not because you can't expand, it's because you have not consistently been pushing in that direction. So imagine sitting in a boat on calm water. There's no storms, there's no danger, there's no crisis, but the motor is off, right? You're fine. The current is still moving, but it's slowly, quietly. And because the water feels calm, you don't even notice the shift until you look up and realize that you are far, far, far further away than you thought you were headed, right? That is the financial drift. It's not a disaster that throws you off course. It's not failure that throws you off course. It's just the lack of propulsion. Does that make sense? Here is the part that I want you to remember. Drift is the default mode, right? If nothing intentional interrupts the pattern, your financial life will default to just paying the bills, maintaining your lifestyle, just handling emergencies when they come up, responding to urgency, and all of which are not a bad thing, right? But if you desire to build financial wealth and financial freedom, then you are going to have to get out of the default mode and intentionally build a buffer. Because without a buffer, you can't pause long enough to redirect. Everything becomes about right now. Nothing becomes about what's next, right? Buffer is not just having a savings account, it's about having space to think, make a decision, stop being reactive and start being proactive. You want to choose differently and you need the space to do that, right? If you want to invest and buy a rental property, but all you have is what's in front of you, that's not a buffer. Those are not large enough margins. You need to build up your buffer so that you can shop around and make sure that the investment property, it makes sense, right? You're not rushed into making a decision. But if you are so busy with just maintaining, then you won't have the time, you won't have the space to build, create margin, do some redirection, right? You won't be able to invest in your future, right? That's what I mean. Because without margin, the drift just gonna stay feeling normal. And this is why women often say, I don't know how I ended up here, right? Because the amount of money that you're making, it should make you feel like I should be able to get ahead if I make some small adjustments, right? If you've been working hard for years, getting promotions, and you've been making some financial strides, right? That's not incompetence, right? That's drift. That's what I mean when I say drift. That drift is going to feel like progress while it is happening because you're active, you're actually moving, you're functioning. But movement is not the same as direction. Think again about the plane, right? And I talked about this in a previous video, but if this is your first time here, you're going to hear the story again. Think about the plane leaving 1 degree off course, right? It doesn't crash, God willing, right? It doesn't feel dramatic, right? And people on the plane doesn't even notice that it's 1 degree off. But over time, that small degree creates a completely different destination. Drift works the same way. These small decisions, these unexamined patterns, these unattended priorities, they don't feel major, but over years, they shape your financial outcome. And it again, it won't even be in this huge dramatic way, but in a gradual one that will make you feel like you're stuck. You're treading water. You're not moving forward, right? But here is the good news. Drift is impermanent. I'm going to say that again. Because in the moment, you'll feel like, oh my gosh, I'm drifting off course and I'm not headed in the right direction, right? Drift is impermanent, meaning it doesn't correct itself. It corrects when you notice it. But the minute you recognize it, you regain control because awareness interrupts the default mode. And once default mode is interrupted, direction becomes possible again, right? Not because you overhauled your entire life, but because you started reinforcing an expansion mentality and then you became intentional about that thing. So, here, I want you to ask yourself this question and answer it honestly. Where have I been moving but not actually progressing? Where has my financial life felt active but not intentional? Where have I allowed maintenance to replace direction? Listen, drift doesn't mean that you have failed at something. It just means that your direction, your intended direction, has not been reinforced. And direction can always be reclaimed because once you see the drift clearly, you start noticing something even deeper. Patterns don't just form quietly, they form without permission. And unless you interrupt them, they become your permanent blueprint. Here is your anchor. Drift isn't chaos, it's the default mode. And once you become aware, it puts the direction back into your hands and you are now back in control. If this video has helped you to see your money differently, I want you to subscribe and share it with someone else who would find value in it, right? Because what you're learning in these videos are the habits that will lead to building real financial wealth. Remember these two things. One, breakthrough starts when you decide to take control. And then two, wealth is not built by accident. It is built by the decisions that you make today. I'll see you next time.